Relationships are hard, and there is no set checklist even which we can tick mark to say that this is how we get better at it. This applies not just to our romantic relationships, but also to the relationships we have with our parents, with our colleagues, with our siblings, with our cousins, with our friends, and all the relationships we form throughout our lives. The trick, the truth, quite literally, is to keep learning how we can get better at them. Today's video is aimed to be one such resource. Hello, good people of the internet. Today's amazing question in Ask a Human, Not an AI is an anonymous question. It is around relationships. It is specifically around selfless love in relationships. Now, it's an anonymous question, so I'll give a few details. I'm asked, a few days ago, while sitting in meditation, I had a sudden realization that I am a very selfish person. I don't love my parents or anyone. Especially, I felt about my mother that she does so much work for everyone without expecting anything in return, and I don't love her like she loves me. The realization didn't happen through the thoughts, it was the feeling without thoughts. Wow. The feeling was very disturbing at the time. Can imagine. Now, I'm thinking that I fooled myself and my parents by not loving them selflessly. They must be thinking that I love them selflessly. I'm having a hard time making peace with this realization. Wow. That is such an honest realization, isn't it? I love this question, and I have a four-part response to your question. Firstly, let's talk about putting things in a bit of perspective. The big picture perspective that I want you to have from this realization is that only a person who would love someone would actually think in this manner. Because you are quite literally asking me to help you love your parents better. You're looking for ways to love your parents in a better manner. What more could a parent want from their child, isn't it? So you should really realize that this can only occur to someone. In fact, if you're having a hard time making peace with this realization, it is actually because you truly love your parents and you want to have better ways to express that love. So I want you to understand that this realization is actually good for you. It's good for you and it's good for all of your relationships, not just with your parents. I mean, if you were asking this even for your partner, what more could a partner want from his or her partner? That their partner actually look for better ways to love them, isn't it? So realize that this realization is actually happening for you. It's happening for you to make you better in all of your relationships. Next, let's talk about selfless love. You've mentioned that you're having a hard time making peace with the realization that your love for your mother is not as selfless as your mother's love for you has been. And you mentioned that you do not love your parents selflessly. Now, I want to dig deeper into the selfless love that you talk about. You see, I can understand that there can be different manifestations of love in different relationships, and a lot of times the actions that are carried out as an expression of that love would be selfless in the sense that there are no selfish motives, no selfish concerns, no expectations from the other person to actually reciprocate that love. Hmm? It could be the case. But when we talk about selfless love, I think it's sort of a misnomer because every expression, every manifestation of love will always have an imprint of yourself. Consider for a moment your mother's love for you is bound to be different than your love for your mother because it's the relationship, isn't it? Or an even better example, a mother's love for her son is supposed to be different than a mother's love for her daughter. The same mother, but these are two very different relationships. So, every expression, every manifestation of a love that a mother has for her child will be different with regards to the relationship where that love is being acted out. And therefore, in that sense, love can be selfless, but it will always have an imprint of the self that is carrying out the action of love. The reason why I'm explaining all of this to you in this manner is because I want you to outgrow this idea that you need to compare the different kinds of love that you have. For example, you need not compare the love that you have for your mother with the love that your mother has for you because these are two different kinds of love. The actors in the situation are same, but the the action is happening from the opposite self. The way your mother would express love for you is supposed to be, it's bound to be different than how you would express your love for your mother. And therefore, you need not compare these two different, very different kinds of love. Rather, what you should be focusing on is maybe trying to see whether you are actually being authentic in your relationship with your mother, and whether you're giving your mother the space to be authentic in your relationship. Whether you have done that in the past is important, but what's more important is whether you're doing that right now. That matters much more than anything else in this entire arc of a story. And when it comes to the idea of expecting something in return for your love, I think both sides of the interpretation are correct. What I mean is, in one manner of speaking, we all want fulfilling relationships where our love is actually reciprocated by the other person too. I mean, consider for a moment that maybe it's your nephew or your niece or your cousin who's asking you for relationship advice, and very clearly the relationship that they are in right now is a one-sided relationship where it's only them putting in all the effort to show love, to express love, to show concern for the other person, and they're not getting anything in return. You would of course advise them to see if it can get better, see if it can be reciprocated from the other side. But if not, you would advise them to walk out of that relationship, because you actually want a more fulfilling relationship for them, isn't it? Especially if you love them. So in this manner of speaking, we do want relationships where our love is reciprocated, where we get something in return in that sense. But it's also true at the very same time that not every act of love is supposed to be reciprocated, not especially in the same amount or at the same moment, etc. For example, my parents cannot reciprocate everything that I do for them, and I cannot reciprocate everything that my parents have done for me over the years, are doing for me right now, etc. etc. It's not a trade after all, isn't it? So again, it comes down to a moment by moment choice. And in every moment, you have to let your highest self take over and be as authentic as possible to that higher self. In fact, that reminds me of a very recent video I uploaded on YouTube where I was talking about one of my favorite songs ever, Be Yourself by Audio Slave. I think you should check out that video too, because the entire message of that song is to be yourself, to be as authentic as possible. Now, before we go any further, I have a request to make of you. Like this video if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and copy the link of this video so as to share with your community as soon as you're done with it. Now, let's keep going. Next, I want to talk about what your next steps could be after this realization. In your own words, you mentioned that you feel like you fooled yourself and your parents by not loving them selflessly, by not loving them properly, even. Well, I think it's a great news for you, because you have your entire life ahead of you. And if you are realizing that the way you were loving your parents so far was not good, not proper, you must have some clue as to what it would mean to show proper love to them. You have your entire life ahead of you, no matter how many years, months, days, hours it would be. But at this moment, try and show your proper love to your parents. That's it. Now, there could be a fear lurking in the back of your mind that what if the love that I'm expressing to them is not proper enough, is not selfless enough, etc. And I just explained it back to you that you do not have to compare your love with someone else's love. You don't have to compare your love with even your future self's love. What you have to do is to be present, to be in the present moment. Let your highest self come over in the present moment and see what love looks like in this moment and act out of it. As simple as that. If you can incorporate that, I think you're good. You would be able to show all the selfless, all the proper love that you think your parents deserve from you. You should act in that manner. And I think when it comes to the next steps, that is all I would want to talk to you about. Next, I want to talk a little bit more about this realization that you just had. Something very interesting that you mentioned in your question was that the realization didn't happen through thoughts, but rather it was feeling without thoughts. I think I very well understand what you mean here. There are some moments in our lives when we are so moved by something that we react or we feel something first and make sense of it later. Now, that could be a very moving scene in a TV show or a movie, even. It could be an event that occurred in front of us, maybe in our neighborhood or maybe in our own lives. Quite a lot of times, this can happen that you experience something and you feel the depth of that situation. You react to the depth of that situation first and make sense of it later. I'm saying that from experience because it happened very recently with me when I experienced the death of a loved one. I was crying first and I was making sense of it later. And I think personally that realizations such as this are extremely important in our lives. Primarily so because they help our conscious selves to, to give a well deserved break from the continuous stream of thoughts. You know how we feel as if our conscious selves, what we call our I, the letter I, we feel that our conscious selves are what is running the entire show. And realizations such as this can very well help you break free of the illusion that this is not actually the case. Your conscious selves, the conscious thinking that we do, is actually a very small part of everything else that is going on. A lot of our calculations, a lot of our processing, a lot of our in depth feelings, etc., are actually being done unconsciously, completely under the hood. And I think what you should realize, what is the biggest realization that I would want you to have from all of this, is to realize that the unconscious part of your psyche is also you. It's not something alien. And in fact, if such a realization has popped up into your conscious attention, it is because it is crying for you to accept it. So accept it as your own. Do not fight it. Integrate that part of your psyche as something which is completely you. Accept it completely and then see where you need to act. A lot of times, the only action that we really need to take is to simply accept it and let it be. Sometimes the action could be to act despite of something that is coming up from our unconscious, and sometimes the action could be to act because of something that is coming out of our unconscious. No matter what is the situation right now, you need to inculcate this discernment to be able to make this kind of a judgment from your highest self and be as authentic as you can be. That's it. That's all there is to do. This question reminded me of one of the first questions that was asked of me in the Ask a Human Not an AI series. The question was, are we all secretly selfish? And is there even such a thing as a selfless good deed? I think the answer is quite relevant to what we talked about here. So make sure you check out that video too. And I'll see you in the playground soon again. Until next time, peace out.